when Anora burns herself out so that Galad and Barrelane can be together, I wanted to start a fire and then throw my book into it. That's all I'm going to say. You stilled yourself during the last battle to save Galad, who was already basically dead? Okay, girl, okay. I was so mad.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I just wanted to say, me and Aradia, we've put in a lot of work into these episodes. Me and Aradia, we put a lot of work into these episodes, and, we could really use Patreon support. Our Patreon has been a real source of income to both me and Aradia over the last few months, and for me, long before that. If you like what we're doing here, if you like the guests we're bringing in, if you like the longer episodes that we're producing, all of that is more work for John, myself, and Aradia. So, if you really can, go out there and support us on Patreon. I'd really appreciate that.
If you've been thinking that you should get around to it, or that you wanted to change your pledge, or, something like that, you want to check the Patreon out for the first time, now would be a good time. Because, we're really happy with the product that we're putting out and the content we're putting out, but it does take a lot of work, turns out.
Turns out.
Shockingly. Yeah. So, if you were on the fence, now would be a really nice time to come off the fence onto the side of helping us out.
And one of the things that we've added for all our Patreons is now you can go back and watch everything live. You don't have to be at the live events to see us live. And not only do you get to hear us live, but you get to watch the video. So it's completely unedited. I'm putting it up on YouTube for you to go back and watch, and you can pretend you can yell at us in real time. The normal podcast is going to come out the way it has always been, but if you're a Patreon and you want to go see the sausage being made, it will be available for you. So that's something that we are adding. So and the video does take a lot of extra work and time and effort to get posted. So,
and we are doing more of the Patreon only episodes. We have restarted making those because we didn't have enough work, and so we thought we would add some more work, which we definitely haven't forgotten repeatedly. We need to get around to that. Definitely has never happened. So we're really trying to justify all the support you've given us already, but it turns out that we have standards that are expensive when it comes to hours of the day. So if you want to help us out with that, we'd appreciate it. Obviously, with the way the world is and the way that people's lives are, that's not always a feasible thing, and we absolutely love every single listen and like and review and positive mention and conversation. Those are all very valuable, but if you have a little bit of money to support the arts, we could appreciate it really a lot right now.
Well, as someone just tuning in, I thank you for the podcast you're making, and I get behind that because it's you're doing good work.
Very gratifying.
Episode 350, come on!
I can't believe
look at that.
I mean, that's a lot of content.
Good for you. That's huge. That's awesome. It's a cool thing to be able to listen to 350 episodes of a podcast. Yeah. That you can't say that for a lot of podcasts, and it's fun to be able to just have something you can listen through like that. It's cool.
The binge is very real, and it's fun when people join the community and say, "I'm in episode 12 and I'm loving it," and it's like, "Oh boy,
oh baby."
Just you guys.
And I was gonna say we only need 10 more episodes, and we're back to where we started. We've come a full 360.
A full 360. Oh,
that was Travis's joke. So I gotta give credit for that one.
And I mean, I feel it's funny taking credit for it, right? Because I have not been part of it for the whole time to the same degree that Seth has, and yet I feel so invested in it. I've been part of it for so long in some capacity, and you've been there since very early, right? Like I was a binge person at first, and then I found the community, and then I helped build the community, and it's just, it keeps growing, and I'm so invested in it, and it's just such a delight that I get to keep finding insights and new guests and people in chat. It just keeps going, that there keeps being more, right? Like I don't even really listen to Wheel of Time that much because I'm so saturated in content about it, but totally. It's just, it's really wonderful and weird that this is what's happening and this is my life now. You know, just being here is an honor. It's not like we get paid a whole lot, but at the same time, it is a lot of work. So it's nice to get paid at least as much as I made at my library job. That's been a really nice, like I used to listen to it at the library and get paid to shelf books. And now I, am working on improving that pay. Yeah, Bambi, binge, yell, host, profit. That is of operations. Third time in a row, we've got Recappa.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm delighted. I love this podcast, so this has been just fun for me. I can't wait to listen to the episodes. This has been fun.
We're really happy to have you. It's been super fun to get these early travel chapters out of the way.
Totally. Well, it was fun to just like, again, I mentioned this last time, but to pick random chapters in Crown of Swords and just dive in is fun. Because it's fun to just pick a part of the series and go back in and see what you're feeling. And I have thoughts on this, but these were a fun 3 chapters to do. I really enjoyed it.
Well, and you sent me, you're like, I want these 3 chapters. And I was like, okay, well, it's all one story. And I wasn't sure if you were aware of that when you picked it, but I thought that you were, and that's why you like picked those 3 in a row.
Maybe leave this in the podcast because it's funny, but honestly, I thought, as far as my memory goes, I thought I got an email that said, do you want to come on for these 3 days, these 3 chapters? And I was just like, yes, fuck it. I'll do whatever What Spoilers wants. And so I don't remember. I definitely didn't like pick these chapters specifically on purpose. I don't remember. I just remember saying yes. That's all I remember.
Just say yes and go with it.
I have an email
like,
from
yeah, you want me for 3?
I'm going to pull this up right now. I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to put it on screen.
Like, it's not that I don't believe you. I'm just like, I don't remember. I just thought that I was like offered 3 chapters and I said yes. Because this came up last time. You were like, when you picked these chapters, and I was like, did I pick these chapters?
Taviran.
I'll tell you, like, if I was picking my favorite, because I'll tell you my favorite Crown of Swords chapter is Mind Trap. That is the best Crown of Swords chapter. So if I was picking, I know I would have picked Mind Trap.
Miscommunication equals choice. That makes perfect sense.
But also it's very Recappa Sedai, and maybe I was just a mess that night, and you emailed me, and I was like, yes, let's do it. Pick these 3 dates. Like, that totally could have happened. I believe it.
Yes. So, all right. I'm pulling this up on screen.
Yeah.
Oh.
I believe you. I'm just a mess. That's the bottom line.
Here we go.
My
top 3 choices would be April 6, 8, and 13.
Okay, so then you let the schedule of chapters dictate.
So you pick dates, not chapters.
Exactly. There we go. I picked dates.
That makes sense.
That's what it is. That makes sense. So we're both right.
Yes. So you looked at the dates, was like, those 3 dates look good for me, without realizing that there was a chapter associated with those dates.
No, that makes so much sense, because the other day when you said picking these 3 chapters, I was like, I literally didn't even look at the chapters. Because I thought it would be fun to just dive in wherever and see what happens. And turns out these are actually a great 3 chapters to do in sequence.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Very
That's funny, though. I really like... I was like, did I choose this?
Well, and funny enough...
It's a fun thing to revisit the Kolivir stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is one of those subplots that, on a broad scale, I just think about it and I'm like, yeah, that didn't matter to me. But going back into the actual chapters and rereading it, it's like, okay, this is why this is here. And will they keep this on the show? And if they don't, what are the things we get from this that they can work around with? And it's interesting. I actually really like revisiting this for those reasons. It's fun to think about in the context of the show. Because I don't think they'll keep Kolivir.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
It would be one of those characters where Rafe says, he tells some background actors that they are this character, and they should think about that accordingly. And there may be a couple of hints, but there's no lines or anything for those characters. And I could see a Kolivir-like character, being in the background, or perhaps a mention of someone trying to take power while he was gone and got, and Barrelane shut her down or something like that. A one-off line would be a great way to cover this sequence of chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I think it's built up so much, and I was thinking about this today. Like, if you're adapting this for TV, I'm sure we'll get into all this, but 3 things really happen, which is Rand finds out Kolivir's a traitor and has taken the throne which is not cool because it's not hers. Also, Fail becomes a spy so that she can out her. Also, Honora is double-crossing Colivir so that she can out her. And just thinking about all three of those things, only one of those needs to happen. Like, we don't need all three of these people plotting against Colivir and all this buildup. We just need one. It takes it away from Fail, honestly, because it would be more interesting if maybe even Colivir wasn't crowned yet and Fail uncovered this beforehand and was able to do something about it. The way it's done, it's just like by the time we get there, we know what's up. And all these people who are like, also, I know she's a traitor. Like, who fucking cares? We know. You know.
I was thinking about, why is this from Perrin's POV? It's all about Rand and his obsession with not killing women. So why are we seeing it from Perrin's POV? It doesn't make any sense to me. Until I realize what this is really all about is the dynamic between Berelain and Fail. They are both there in order to take down Colivir as a traitor. And they're both doing it in their unique way. And what we end up seeing is Berelain gets evidence. Fail gets testimony. Berelain ends up being the more effective of the two. She's an experienced ruler. She's been doing this for years. She has resources. Fail doesn't. Fail has to up her game. And so what we're seeing is really this dynamic from Perrin's point of view that's going to be affecting the rest of his life, which is basically Fail and Berelain competing to be spies and successful. You know, from a top down, you're like, who's involved? Rand and Colivir, and it's all about the Dragon Reborn and the Aiel and the Ashaman. But really what we're seeing is, you said, it's all about the spying. And the spying is all about Berelain and Fail.
That's such an interesting point. I had never thought about this as a Berelain versus Fail scene, but that totally makes sense. Because I also, when I read it, it annoys me when Fail accuses Colivir, and then Honora steps out and does the exact same thing. And it's like, why did we need both of you here? And that's a really good explanation, is it's Fail versus Berelain. It's Fail stepping forward first, and then Berelain's advisor taking care of the situation. But I think the nuances of that are lost on me on my first few read-throughs.
Sure.
I think that I'm just kind of like, why did we need all of these people to find out what was going on with Colivir?
I think part of the problem is that we kind of lose the Fail-Berelain dynamic. It becomes a very surface level thing in the later books, and like there is depth to it, but nobody cares. nobody cares about their dynamic because everyone's just like, it's a stupid dynamic. But like, I really do think he was setting it up to be something pretty epic, and to see this real battle going on between the two of them. And you know, if we weren't so much in Perrin's head where he's such a dunderhead, I would love to see more of the actual machinations the two of them have going back and forth in order to support Perrin and what's going on, you know, in the background. And how and the whole, like, coming together, like, I do think it's really interesting, their dynamic. We just see it from a dumbass's perspective, and so it's really boring.
I love that take. It would be interesting if we weren't seeing it through the eyes of a dumbass.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about Berelain so much in this scene, but thinking about her makes the whole thing make more sense plot-wise, that it's like, no, we're establishing this rivalry, and that one of them they're both trying to do the same thing, really. The nuances of that went over my head. Every time I've reread the series, I've always just looked at this as like, why are multiple people outing Colivir? Like, why wouldn't we give that moment to one character, whether it's Fail or Rand or Honora? Why wouldn't we give that moment to one character and make it special? Particularly Fail, with all this setup, it seems like Fail should be the one to expose Colivir.
But I think what we're seeing is her journey from still kind of inexperienced.
Yeah.
She thought she could go in and do this, but she needs her spies. She needs Fail. She doesn't have it yet. She's starting to set it up, but this is where she realizes, I can't do this by myself. I need thief catchers. I need people who are going to spy for me. I need support. I need spies. I need minions. I need Fail.
Yeah.
I always reference Min's vision, right? What's important in the story? The Falcon and the Hawk, right? And so let's that dichotomy.
Is it though? Is it important?
Jordan thinks it is because he created a vision about it. So that's where I'm going with.
Would we call it important? Since we talk about it so much, I don't know.
Jordan thought it was.
I wouldn't mind that vision not being in the show if it just somehow didn't find its way in there.
Well, I've always said, you cut out a lot of the stuff in between. You make Fael and Berelain work out their differences much earlier. You have Perrin be less of an idiot about it. And all of a sudden you have a trio that is highly effective at doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could have the whole, like, you know, strong, powerful woman dynamic that's, like, not weird.
Yeah.
Which would be really cool. Like, them both supporting Perrin could be a very cool, like, this is how you professional.
And how do you unite the White Cloaks and Perrin and Fael? Yeah, marry his closest advisor, Berelain, off to the White Cloak.
Totally. Totally. It works
Galad.
so well.
The steps are all there. I think you just have to make it less contentious.
Yeah.
And
Less soap opera-y.
And we don't really get much Berelain POV. That's the other thing. Like, Berelain POV is few and far between, and I would love... I mean, we get some fight, and again, Fael is also few and far between, even though we do get some of it. Do we have, like, one Berelain POV in the the Dragon Reborn or something like that?
No, it's, like, at the end. I think it's when Anora's burned out. That scene is from Berelain's POV, when she realizes that Anora's been burned out from getting Galad back.
When Anora burns herself out so that Galad and Berelain can be together, I wanted to start a fire and then throw my book into it. That's all I'm going to say. You stilled yourself during the last battle to save Galad, who was already basically dead? Okay, girl, okay. I was so mad.
But, like, it spoke so much to the volumes of the relationship between Anora and Berelain that, like, you don't see. Like, it's referenced here and in that scene, and the rest of it is, like...
I agree with you, but I also kind of disagree in the sense that, like, I would have liked to see it before that happened. So that when it happened, I was like, oh, I understand why Anora was this committed to Berelain. Yeah. But I'm not sure at the end especially because it's Galad and I just don't care for Galad, but fair. When she stills herself to save Galad for Berelain during the last battle, which I think is significant, we can use all the channelers we can get. I'm just like, girl, no, you didn't. He was already dead. He ran into that fight. He got himself killed. We need you to channel for the rest of the last battle. You don't need to save him for Berelain. I don't know. It bothers me.
See, I'd go Tavirin. They needed the necklace back, so they needed to be in love, so the relationship needed to be there, so he could be saved, so that Domundred could be killed by Lan.
The series gives us a moment of thinking Galad is dead, and then takes it back, which I think is a mistake. I don't think you do that.
I think
if you're
Sanderson does that. And I don't like that he does that.
I mean, I haven't read enough Sanderson to speak to speak broadly to that, but I think in the Wheel of Time, it is shocking when Galad goes down, because after Gowan went down, we were I was so sure Galad would be the one to do it, especially because it had been a really long time before Galad had done anything that I was cheering for. So when he went down, it was shocking, and I loved it. And then he got brought back, and I think that weakened the last battle. Look, like, we don't need Galad to survive the last battle. This is the last battle. He died. We saw him go down. I don't know. Anyway, Anora.
I want to say Galad died because of legend, just because the Arthurian legend has, like, Galad is so important in that I sort of see them taking cues from Arthurian legend and trying to carry that forward. That's the only reason I could see him as a significant character, and they want him to have Galad with one hand as, like, I don't know, a history of legend, something of legend.
I'm interested in what you said about Arthurian legend. Who do you see Galad as in Arthurian legend? Lancelot?
Galad? No, Lancelot is clearly Lan.
Am I bringing some?
Yeah, no, with
Yeah, so Galad is Galahad. Like, I don't know how to say it differently. It's the same word. Galahad, thank you.
Yeah, Galad, Galahad.
Galahad. Yes, Galahad. Okay. Because, yeah, like, Gowan's a character, too, in Arthurian legend, and I I hadn't thought of Galad as Galahad, so that's okay. Galahad. Yeah, actually, I don't know why I've never thought of that. That makes total sense and is definitely why he chose that name. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good. Glad we talked about that. I'm gonna be thinking about that now. Glad I asked.
By the way, in the third book, when Rand pulls Kalendor out of the stone, that's a analogy for pulling the sword out of the stone of Arthurian legend. Just in case you had missed that little obvious. No, I'm being a little facetious here.
No, I love this stuff.
There have been people who needed to have that pointed out. So.
I love this stuff. Here's a fun one too that I didn't discover till like a year ago, and I'm obsessed with Arthurian legend, which is why when you say Galahad, Galad, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. But Arthur's mother was Igraine, and Rand's mother is Tigraine, which I don't think is a coincidence.
No, not at all.
So yeah, I think this stuff is fun. Yeah.
No, this without a doubt the myths fade to legend. All of our Arthurian legend is 100% based on Rand and his family.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first time someone said, "Oh, Lan, you mean Lancelot?" I went,
I don't agree with that. I mean, I agree with that in this. No,
in the name,
I don't buy that.
Lan's
not Lancelot.
But you have to admit that there's a certain name parallel there with all the other Arthurian legends. You know,
I don't know if I can buy Lan as Lancelot. I'm thinking about Lancelot as a character and Lan as a character, and I'm not. I'm going to be thinking about this. I love this because I love Arthurian legend.
Nynaeve is Nimue.
I love that Nynaeve is Nimue. Nynaeve is the Lady of the Lake. I love that Egwene is Guinevere. Well, I actually don't love that Egwene is Guinevere. I'm not sure there's that much of a parallel there, but I like where these names come from, and I think this is a really fun convo. But Lan is Lancelot. I don't see any connection.
I'm not familiar enough. I just read fantasy based on, you know.
Only that he's a knight that rides a horse, champion, that sort of thing. You know, nothing particularly. In the same way that, you know, Morgan Le Fay is Moraine. Well, they're both just magic users, right? It's not like one's an evil woman, and you know, there's no parallel there. It's just legend fades to myth in the loosest sense of the word. You know, you can have associations that maybe the name comes along, but the character doesn't.
No, I love that stuff. I've always thought of Moraine and Morgana. Yeah, I love that. If you haven't read Mists of Avalon, end this podcast now and go read Mists of Avalon. No, I'm kidding. But you should read Mists of Avalon. It's a staple. It's a staple. It's been a while. It's maybe a little longer than it needs to be, but it's such a wonderful world and book. I love it. Staple for me.
Chapter 5, A Broken Crown, and our symbol is the dragon.
What is the broken crown? It has to do with Fail and Colivere, but I don't...
I think it's just a literal...
He breaks her
crown to pull it out of her hair and then fuses it back together.
But what does that... Why is there a broken crown associated with Saldaea, and why is Fail so important here?
I thought those would be unrelated. I think we're talking about the broken crown of Saldaea because there's no one to inherit it.
So you're saying, Aradia, that broken crown doesn't make sense because Rand is just taking over, so it's not really a broken crown. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean, like, it seems like Fael's really important in this scene. The broken crown is a literal symbol, but it's also the name of the throne of Saldaea. And it's just like... Why is the crown of Saldaea called the broken crown? I think it's called the broken crown. Yeah, because that's something that Davram yells at Perrin at the beginning. I bet she told you all about the broken crown. And then this title is A Broken Crown, and Fael's so central to what happens, but it's not the Saldaean crown. And I've been trying to make sense of this for years and years and years. So help.
Broken crown. One, it's a reference to Fael is the broken crown. Like, she's in this chapter, it's important, therefore it's a reference to her.
To her, because she's third itself. In line to the throne or whatever.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Second, Rand literally breaks the crown off of Colivere's head. Third, he breaks Colivere's, you know, the chapter ends with the throne she held so briefly. Her crown, her presence, her rule is broken in this chapter. So I think he's just being clever, to be perfectly honest, and being like a broken crown in two places. He's physically breaking the crown, and it's an analogy for Fael.
I always interpreted it as the literal breaking of Colivere's crown, But hearing you say that, Aradia, that the Saldean crown is the broken crown, to me, it feels like RJ trying to assign Fail more importance than she's maybe earned. And I know that sounds shitty, but it's like we've built up to this moment of Fail accusing Kolivir, and I think he wants to like make a big deal. So that to me, knowing that it's the broken crown, that actually makes sense to me, because I think he wanted us to think this was like a big Fail moment, even though I don't see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's bothered me for however many dozen rereads I've been through this book. So, all right.
It comes back to the significance of this is a Fail versus Barrelane chapter. This is where Fail really has to step up, realizes that her game is not good enough, and she needs to get Cha Fail. So if I come back to that point,
I guess this is one of those chapters that sets up the Fail versus Barrelane thing to be a bigger deal than I later interpret it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Very much so.
The fact that it's a prophecy, I expect like something to come from this. I expect, I don't know what, but why else does this prophecy exist if something big in the plot isn't going to come from it?
Yeah.
So that what you said, Seth, about this being a Fail versus Barrelane scene, I'm like, actually, I like that, because it lends a little more weight to that as far as like this being a long-term thing. But I just don't think there's ever a moment where I think the Fail versus Barrelane thing is worthy of a prophecy. And just so that helps me understand this moment better, with like why Fail and Honora need to talk about what Kolivir did. But to me, it's wasted a little bit. I think it would be a better moment if it was just Fail outing Kolivir, and if the stakes were a little higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then the title might make more sense. So yeah.
yeah.
You would make
it's all
my
about what he
confusion less,
intended
though.
versus where it ended up, right? If you look at where the relationship ended up, it was like, oh yeah, whatever, no big deal.
Yeah.
Why are you making a big deal out of this title? But if you look at, like, he was really intending to make that a much bigger deal than it was. Maybe it makes more sense.
Yeah.
I think that's
that.
right.
That ties up the loose ends.
And I think that's fun to talk about, like, where was he at? That, brought us here. But yeah, I think that's right, because it just feels like too many things are set up in this chapter or tied off in this chapter. I don't even know. It's like so many characters are telling us what Kolivir did. Who are we even supposed to cheer for?
Overkill.
Yeah. We've got like over 3 characters coming in and being like, this is what Kolivir did. So it's not like Fail gets this moment of, I was a spy and I uncovered this thing for you. It doesn't feel that way at all.
If anything, it undercuts her, because her evidence she has no evidence. All she's doing is asserting.
She says, I have no proof.
Right.
And then Honora steps forward with more convincing evidence. And I had never thought about it before talking to you that, that is setting up Barrelane versus Fail. But that nuance was missed on me on my first, on every read through I've had. And I was just like, why are we going through all these characters who know what Kolivir has done? Why are we spending all this time on it?
Well, and Perrin asked that question at one point, and it's, partially it's because Rand is stalling.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan is setting that up, that, like, rather than coming in and making a declaration, he's letting a bunch of people speak while he thinks, because he doesn't want to say the obvious thing, which is you're sentenced to death. You're sentenced to death for doing this.
And that to me is the most interesting part of this chapter, is the fact that Rand tries to sentence her to something less than death, and not knowing culture sentences Kolivir to something that is worse than death without knowing it. I think that's interesting. I'm not a big fan of Rand not wanting to sentence women to death given some other moments in the series. I think it gets a little old, but I appreciate that moment of Rand saying, I don't want to sentence her to death, so I'm going to do this instead. And he doesn't realize he's taking away, he's doing something worse because he doesn't understand nobility culture. I think that's interesting. I just think there's too much around it.
You know what bugs me about that, though?
Mm-hmm.
He's not trusting men.
What does she say to him?
She has had a vision of Kolivir being hung That's how she knows Colivera will die, by hanging. And by trying to avoid that, Rand is actively running away from one of Min's visions, which we know always causes it. Always.
That's crazy too, because if you want to avoid Colivera, this is going to sound very crass, but if you want to avoid the fate of Colivera hanging herself, you should behead her.
Right, exactly, exactly, yeah.
And she tries. I demand the headsman. I will not be hanged like a common criminal. It's,
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if what you're trying to do is escape Min's viewing, cut her head off, because that's not the viewing. I mean, not to say it like that, but...
And she wasn't going to get hung until Rand tried to spare her beheading. Because she was going to be beheaded. If he had followed Kyrian in law, she would have been beheaded, not hung. The fact that he stripped her of her nobility meant that she had no way to die like a noble. She had to commit suicide, which meant that, you know, she had to hang herself because you can't chop your own head off with an axe. Much more difficult.
But no, I like, for her, that was the way to go out with the most dignity.
Which was, like, inevitable. Like, Rand had no choice in her need to exit stage left with a bang. Like, that was her choice and her destiny from the moment that she decided to take over Kyrian. So, him trying to step aside from that is just, like, no. and that's what Min saw, was the inevitability of Colivera's commitment to her cause. And she's like, I am going to do or die. Oh, look, I failed, therefore I die. This is not something she's trying to escape. She expects to die when she loses her crown. The two things are the same. Her life and her political career are one and the same to her.
I think it's such a weird thing at this point in the series, because Rand is trying to step up as a leader, right? And like kind of come into his own as the Dragon Reborn and a king and figure out what all that means. And at the same time, this thing about not sentencing women the same way he sentences men, we've seen how this pans out for him in the past. And it's, you know, Maureen's gone now. And it's like interesting to see that he still has this issue. Given, I mean, after Maureen, I would have thought that would have been out of his head. And it does seem like, I mean, like, you know, you saw what happened. We saw what happened, and Rand saw what happened. And so in this moment, when Rand's like, I can't sentence her to death, and he decides instead, let's exile her to a farm, which to Colivera is worse than death. She would rather have been beheaded. As much as I don't like the Colivera subplot, it is interesting to see how Rand responds to it.
It's a very formative trauma for men. So
yeah, that whole thing is so messed up. I think it's a little weird that that's the thing that starts them off. I don't know.
A lot of death.
I just saw this woman hang. Let's fuck, though. Yeah. I don't know. Am I wrong?
Comfort sex is a scene I've seen played out in so many like movies and shows that it's like, it's believable, I guess, but it's also like, I just saw a corpse. Let's pop a sexual tension between us.
100.
But when I was in college, a friend of mine died, and definitely ended up hooking up with somebody afterwards because we were both just miserable, and like,
sure,
you want to feel better about yourself, you know, and like, and about life, and you want to feel alive again. And it's like, it's not like you know, it's like, oh, dead corpse. It's like you're feeling an incredible level of emotion.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they say, why do people go to horror movies for the first dates? Because it gets your blood pumping and you can't mistake that like excitement for love. Like, it's like the same feeling, you know, in your body. And
totally.
There's a similar sort of like grief and passion feel very similar in terms of what they do to your emotions.
That's fair.
I hear that, and maybe I'm misspeaking, because I actually think when Min, I'm just going to use the word, hooks up with Rand, it actually feels like the most real of the three relationships Rand has when those two come together for the first time. It does feel very real. So while I'm poking fun at it, I probably shouldn't, you know, someone's hanged herself and that's what led to them. But I hear what you're saying. And I do think that it is a rare moment in Rand's three relationships where one of them reaches out and takes something she wants because that's where she's at. And I actually find that relatable. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that's, yeah.
It's also a very cathartic.
Cathartic.
Thank you. Cathartic moment
you
where,
had it.
The two of them, like the teasing has been going on for a while now. The sitting on his lap, the kissing him on the lips. Like, this is not like coming out of nowhere. Like, this is the two of them have been spending a lot of time
during
together.
Dumas Wells and that whole thing. Yeah,
right, they were kidnapped together. They were back to, there was a lot of like, he went nuts when he found out she was, so there's that like protectiveness that's been going on between the two of them. Like, it's frankly, if anything, it's frustrating that it takes something of that magnitude to get them to hook up rather than just any of the other times when they should have been hooking up.
No, but I hear that completely because, like, my thing with Rand's relationships, I'm not going to go into all of this because I have so many thoughts on it. But one thing I feel is that this is a very eventful series over the course of 14 books. A lot of stuff happens, and there's no reason these three relationships can't develop out of events and experiences that these people share together. You know what I mean? So like when you bring up the example of like Min being with Rand, Dumas Wells, yeah, that's a good one. Like that would bring two people together, I would imagine, going through those experiences. And I don't feel like the series is written that way very often when it comes to Rand's relationships, but I hear what you're saying because yeah, they would have had a connection after that. I wish we got more of that from the books where you see these relationships developing out of real things that they've been through together because they go through plenty.
Well, and I think part of that is certainly in the first 6 books or so, there's a lot of, and then they were on the road for 12 weeks together, and
yeah,
you don't see any of that, but like that's Lan and Nynaeve, right? That's when the relationship is developing. There's just a lot of relationships like that happen very off screen, Tom and Moraine. Everyone's like, that came out of nowhere. I'm like, look at how much time they spent together on the road. It wasn't nothing.
I mean, they spent a lot of time together on the road, but we never saw what brought them together. And I come to think about this chapter with Perrin and Faile. We spent the last 2 chapters talking about Perrin being worried about Faile. And then we get to this chapter and Perrin actually gets to see Faile. And we see Faile looks at him and she's jealous about Berelain. And we get so much more information and such a real like moment. And like, to me, it's just not interesting to have Perrin speculating about what's going on with Faile so that by the time we get there, we've already talked about it so much. I think it would be more real. I just want to see more real moments with these relationships. I just want to see these things happen because like so much happens in the Wheel of Time. So many exciting things. And to see these people go through those things together, it makes total sense that they would become connected. So it's crazy to me that out of all 3 of Rand's relationships, I never feel like any of them are real because he's been through so much and they should have been there with him through it. And Min's the closest, but yeah.
How do you feel about Mat and Tuon's relationship? Because I know you were hating on Mat earlier. Well, hating on Mat. I know you were saying you were hating on Mat, yeah.
I was. No, I was. You can say it. I was hating on Mat. I think Mat and Tuon's relationship is absolutely ridiculous.
Hey everybody, Editing Seth here. Just want to let you know if you don't want to hear a whole bunch of cursing, you might want to go ahead and skip forward about 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes should just about do it. Yeah.
I think it's no more ridiculous than the other relationships in the series. I mean that. However, Prince of the Ravens, this prophecy of he's going to be with the daughter of the 9 moons, and then we get there, and it's just right before the last battle, and he's in charge of the last battle because of what Brendel did. His place as Prince of the Ravens is so utterly insignificant, and he is so uninterested in what's going on with the Damane. I mean, back in book 2, Shan-Chan were recognizing what was going on with the Damane. So for us to get to the last book and have Matrim Cawthon marry into this and then say, break it up, Egwene and Tuon. You shouldn't be fighting like cats. Go fuck yourself, Matt. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself 10 times over. You married into this. And now, I mean, you didn't have a problem with it. And now you're telling these women to break it up because they're what? In your mind, catfighting? Shut the fuck up, Matt. Shut the actual fuck up. If you have a problem with this, maybe you should have said something when you married fucking Tuon. How dare he? How dare he? This is the character. I'm going to go ahead and go off. This is the character who supposedly does the right thing no matter what. Shut the fuck up, Matt. You married Tuon, and then you had nothing to say. Shut up, Matt.
And this is where I think Sanderson did Matt dirty. The Matt that Jordan wrote freed Damane. The Matt that Sanderson...
Yeah. He freed all the Shan Damane.
All the sea folk Damane. No, so when Jordan was writing, when he absconds with Tuon, which is book 10, right?
Yeah, or whenever.
Like
I think he kidnaps her in 9, but yeah, whatever, they get married.
He frees all the sea folk Damane, which is a whole host of Damane.
Well, it's 3 of them.
No, but then they freeze them, and they go about.
They free the rest.
The rest. So he sets them up.
Okay.
And then there's that whole delay, and he uses them to escape, right? Because they're breaking out. So the Matt that Jordan wrote absolutely is there to free Damane, and then Sanderson got his hands on them and forgot all about that. You know, it's a D&D. Whoops, we forgot. You know, like, so this is where I say Sanderson did Matt dirty. Like, that anger at Matt, I really think is directed at the way at the Matt Sanderson.
Because that whole interaction
not
is
the Matt
shit
that existed before.
That whole interaction is unbelievable and nonsense. So
if you'd asked me like what's going to be resolved before the end of the series, that would have been at the top of my list. And I can't forgive Matt. I can't.
Yeah, no, the way that he turns on basically his sister, who was literally enslaved by them, and is then just like, actually, I mean, I'm married to your enslavers, so I'm just going to be casually complicit with what's going on. Is like,
and the way he throws it into Tuon's face, and Tuon was like, nah. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
so
the Empress.
Unbelievable and so not Matt.
Right.
That is not Matt. It's just not.
This is the character who supposedly always does the right thing. And all these books posed him here. All these books set him up to be here in this moment. And he had nothing to say. And I'm supposed to cheer for this guy as the one who always does the right thing. I get so mad at Matt because I don't expect better from Tuon, but I expect better from Matt.
Sanderson wrote Tuon consistently. She was the same.
Tuon is a coward. Tuon knows. She knows what's going on. And she's too much of a coward to acknowledge it. However, Matt knows and isn't too much of a coward to acknowledge it. He just doesn't. Sorry, this is so not the episode that you brought me on to film.
No, it's not at all. But he definitely puts it on his to-do list of like post last battle. I'll take care of that. You know, like that's his like. He knows it's a problem, but he's like, I can't deal with that and win the last battle at the same time.
That's the part of it I concede, but plot-wise,
right?
This was set up.
Yeah.
Why else was Matt there? And so I concede that it's the last battle and there wasn't time, but like at the same time, I needed it to happen.
I would have loved to seen a deal that like you will somehow that the Shan Chan to participate in the last battle also will have to free the Damane, you know, after the last battle or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
something,
some sort of deal like that was set up so that like
rather than the deal that Aes Sedai would be given the option to join the Damane. Yeah, that was not the best deal that was offered.
Brian, I've decided that you are chaotic good.
I'll take it. Chaotic good. So that means that I cause problems, but I'm ultimately fighting for good.
You mean well.
You'll fight for good no matter what. Whether the laws say you should or not. Like, you have your own code of honor and you fight for it no matter what.
Who's a character who does that? Oh, Galad.
No, he's lawful.
Good. Oh, okay.
No, Galad is the definition of lawful.
The funny part is, Matt is chaotic good.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
He is. That is definitely Matt. I wasn't going to say it.
Is he, though? Will he? I mean, all this bullshit about Matt always
chaotic
doing
neutral,
what's
okay?
right.
Chaotic neutral, all right?
Matt does have a little
if you're going to do what's good, Matt.
Maybe.
Thanks for nothing, Matt.
Tom is chaotic good.
Tom is definitely chaotic good.
That sounds right.
Because he'll kill a king for shanking his girlfriend.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Yes, that sounds right, yeah.
Like, you kill my girlfriend, I'll destabilize the country.
Plus, he's the bard. And bards are chaotic good or chaotic neutral, like, basically always.
So I'm chaotic good. I will tear anyone down to do what's good. including Matrim Coffin.
Especially
Basically.
Matrim Coffin.
And Fortuona, first of her goddamn name, whatever. Yeah. So sorry. I feel like I'm the reason that you haven't been able to talk about the chapter this episode.
That's why we
there's
bring
been a-
guests on.
Yeah, there's been a certain progression over the last 3 episodes that we've gotten further and further away from the chapters.
We're developing rapport.
Leave it to me. Leave it to me.
All right, so I would like to read us in, but I want to start with dialogue. So the first few chapters are them still walking through corridors and descriptions of Kyrian, which I leave that as an exercise to the listener to go read those themselves, because I frankly find it boring. So I'm going to start with Rand's first line that breaks the silence. Looking for Aes Sedai? Rand's voice echoed. He smiled unpleasantly. I sent them to the Aiel camp. If the Aiel can't teach them manners, no one can. A shocked murmur rose and fell raggedly. Fear became stronger than the perfumes in Perrin's nose. Colliver gave a start. Why would I? Drawing a deep breath, she gathered dignity. A more than handsome woman in her middle years, without a touch of gray in her dark hair. She bore a regal presence that had nothing to do with the crown. She had been born to command, to reign, so she thought, and her eyes, weighing and measuring, betrayed a hard intelligence. My Lord Dragon, she said, making a curtsy so deep it nearly mocked itself. I welcome you back. Kyrian welcomes you back. The way she said it, she seemed to be repeating herself. Slowly Rand climbed the steps of the dais. Min half made to follow him, then folded her arms. Perrin did follow to be nearer Fail, but only part way. It was her gaze that stopped him, a gaze that probed every bit as much as Colliver's, at him as much as at Rand. Perrin wished he could smell her, not to try discovering why or what, just for the smell of her. The wash of perfumes and fright was too great. Why did she not speak? Why did she not come to him, or smile? Just a smile.
That was a good choice to read in, even though it is like halfway into the chapter. We've already walked through all these hallways and looked at all these people and done all of this like exposition. Like that's really where the chapter.
That's where the
kicks.
chapter starts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what do you think about Colliver's little like I welcome you back, Kyrian, and welcomes
It's a
you back?
very
repetition,
obvious power move.
right?
That's what the flags outside said. She's just verbally repeating the flag signals on top of the palace.
Well, the best card she has to play as of now is the law, right? Like the fact that she's been crowned legally is like, she's like, oh, no, I am Kyrian now. Welcome back. Like but she wants to make it clear, right? Because that is her biggest card to play is she was crowned. Whatever Rand wanted, this was legal.
Yeah.
Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and presentation and perception is more important. And yeah, I agree.
One of the things I think a lot about in the series is power and how power is transferred and who has power and why they have power and how much of that is perception
Yeah.
and how much she's trying to hold on to power simply through being perceived as having power.
Yeah.
For sure. I've learned so much about how power works from studying these books. Like I'm not people smart. I don't understand how people work. Like I've learned a lot about this thing in history that didn't make sense. 7th read of Wheel of Time. Oh, that. Okay. So yeah, I agree. This is all about power and perception.
I love that.
I used to think power was voltage times current, and now I'm learning all sorts of things.
Well, there's the line in Game of Thrones. Power is where people believe it resides, right? It's Avari's line. And I think that you see this slipping away from her in this chapter, which is fun because she realizes that no one's on her side.
Right.
But at the start of it, she thinks she has power.
And it's all verbal. There's nothing that actually like magically happens, or there's no like strings being tied or cut. Like this is all what's happening in people's heads.
I do think there is a big shift, though, when he goes from having some maidens and some guys with swords around him to some maidens and a whole bunch of male channelers around him.
Oh, for
the
sure.
threat
That's
level,
true.
like there's definitely this like that's
Yeah.
a little more than words. That's an open threat that was there the whole time. They just didn't see.
That's the tank
Yeah.
rolling in through the wall moment.
Uh-huh.
Of the negotiations. Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
I do think it's a little silly that Perrin asks himself in this POV, why doesn't Fael smile at me? Why doesn't she at least look at me? Because she's a spy, obviously. She's dressed in Colavir's fucking livery.
Right,
she's
right.
spying. Obviously, she's not going to look at you and smile. And Perrin's like, why doesn't she smile at me?
It's
I'm
because
like, all right.
she's not as obsessed with you as you are with her in this moment of high-stakes political intrigue.
Why doesn't she come running off the dais in the middle of this confrontation between the Dragon Reborn and the Queen of the Country to come hug me?
I can't imagine.
They just suddenly start making out.
It sounds like a great idea.
No,
Yeah.
that's not how this situation works, Perrin.
Right, what does he want? For her to run down and be like, oh, my husband, this was so much fun spying on Colavir, but now you're here. Like, what does he think she's going to do?
No. Even Rand's acknowledgement in the chapter of, like, I know you want to spend time with... He's, like, dealing with national security issues, and in that is, like, my bro wants to spend time with his wife. Like, that's how much of a pain in the ass Perrin has been making himself. It's like, I know you want to spend time with her. Can you chill for 5 minutes while I take care of this country?
Yeah.
Please?
He's like a border collie that won't ever let you not throw the ball.
Yeah.
I love that.
No take,
That sounds
only
right.
Fael.
Some kind of dog.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not generally how wolves are, but, you know, he's just, very much like Rand. Even Rand is aware of it because it's that obsessive. But yeah, and Fael's just like, 5 minutes. We will talk soon.
Yeah. Can you wait until I'm not being a spy anymore? It's only going to be 5 minutes. Can you just wait a couple? Yeah.
He's also very much used to getting immediate feedback from his sense of smell on how people are feeling and what they're thinking. And that's part of, I think, his frustration is he can't smell anything. He's in the middle of, mass of fear
he's
smell.
half blind, essentially. No, for sure. His anxiety is real, but his reasoning is completely shot at this point, much as our patience is with his state.
I honestly think that's why this, because you brought up before, why is this a Perrin POV? And I think this is a point in the series where RJ's having a lot of fun with Perrin smelling people's emotions. And I think this was probably a scene where RJ thought it would be fun to like play with Perrin smelling who's feeling what.
Yeah.
However, I think plot-wise, it might have been interesting to see this from someone else's POV. But when you ask that question, it's like probably because Perrin's getting all these smells. Probably because that way we get to see Perrin smelling what everyone's feeling, and that's supposed to be kind of a fun way to experience the drama here.
I wanted to do another read because I wanted to read the crown breaking.
I have it in a special
I love the
color.
crown breaking. I love the crown breaking.
Because that is a cool scene, and that is the whole, like, that's the focus of
so
this chapter. Yeah.
Yes.
The stones falling to it. Yes.
My Lord Dragon, what is done cannot be undone. If anything has offended you, for all her dignity, all her courage, Colavir made a visible effort not to flinch, as Rand reached out and took hold of the sun crown. There was a loud crack of metal snapping, and the crown flexed, hardly disarraying her tower of curls as it pulled away, slowly straightening. A few of the brilliant yellow stones popped from their settings and fell. He held up the stretched arc of metal, and slowly it bent back on itself until the ends met. And maybe the Asha'man could see what happened, could understand. But to Perrin, one moment the crown was broken, the next it was whole again. No one among the nobles made a sound, not even a shuffling of boots. Perrin thought they might be afraid to. To his nose, stark terror was stronger than any other scent now. It did not quiver. It spasmed wildly. Whatever can be done, Rand said softly, can be undone.
Chills!
Yeah. It's great.
That whole, like, she says, nope, can't be undone, and he literally, physically breaks it and reseals it and is like,
Watch me, bitch.
Yeah. No, it's such a power move. Because it's also being like, I have the one power. You don't.
What if he just got back and saw this? Yeah. Or it could even be, I was thinking about this today, it could even all go down before she crowns herself, because that to me makes more sense as far as Fael being a spy and being effective, is she uncovers these plots before they happen. There are different ways to do it, but I just think by the time this goes down, it's like we knew this was going to happen. And it's a cool thing to see Rand be like, you are a ruler. Watch me literally break your crown and then remend it and take it for myself. Like, that is a cool moment. But we sort of knew that's what he was going to do when he walked into this room, right? I feel like it would be cool to see him walk into the room not knowing and be like, oh shit. And then have Fael be like, this is what happened. and have Rand be like, oh shit, now I'm gonna break your crown. But the setup for 2 chapters is like, yeah, of course that's what you're gonna do. I don't know, that's how I feel.
And then there's another really fascinating angle to this that I don't know if you've thought about. So I don't remember where, but in a few books, I think it's Grandal thinks that the closest thing she holds to a sacred axiom is that anything that the creator the Dark One can unmake. And I see a real echo in whatever can be done can be undone. And this is a very Darth Rand moment.
Cool.
He's getting
that is such a good catch.
I like
he's
that.
really
Because
getting
that's such
into
a
his
true
entropy
power moment.
and chaos
Yeah.
and the Dark One. Like that's what's coming out. And
Yeah.
He's using the essence of the Dark One to take back the power. That's very much like, oh yeah.
like it's not the true
The
power or
breaking of
anything,
Quendiar.
but it's too soon for that. But it's there. There's just
It's that philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's right after Dumai's Wells, which feels like the right point for him to start to be shifting into these ideas that he shouldn't be.
And he's leaning on the Ashaman as his argument in this setting, right? The fact that they are Ashaman and that people are learning that they are Ashaman. Like this is the moment when he's like, oh, by the way, I'm not the only one who can go boom boom with male magic. So yeah.
Yeah, because there was a rumor, and the farm has been a thing people kind of knew about. There's the
there could
amnesty.
be 3 men in the world, maybe.
But yeah, and who knows if they're even effective. Like, we know Rand has the power, but this is, they made their world entrance at Dumai's Wells, but this is when they make their societal entrance.
Yeah.
So, we've got some strong Dark One, Darth Rand energy in this, which and it's being used for good, right? Colivera is not a good player. She's not acting in good faith. She's not going to be an ally. He needs to get rid of her. But is this the right way, given what it does to him? I think that's kind of the threat that's coming through there.
I love this. This adds more layers because to me, this was always just like another level on top of Rand doesn't want to kill women. Like that's always kind of how this came across, was that was the bottom line in reading the books, was like, all right, I get it. Rand doesn't want to kill women. I get it. But I like that there's a lot more to it, that he's really going through it with this.
It's one thing I do appreciate with Jordan. Even when the top line is the same in a lot of chapters, there's second and third plot points that he's layering on top of that. So even though there's a lot of chapters where Perrin's, missing Fael, there's often a lot more going on in that chapter than just that. Otherwise, I wouldn't find them entertaining. But that's his arcing narrative structure.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of plot here that I don't have a lot to say about. We get the reveal of Nora, which I think we talked about in detail. Mm-hmm. She gets shielded by the Ashaman.
She's pretty ballsy for this.
She's pretty ballsy.
She's pretty chill about it. My thing with Nora is I'm just like, why did we need both? I mean, like you said, it's Fael versus Barrelane, so that makes sense.
Yeah, we learn about the 2 poisonings, which again we talked about when they happened.
Loyal's taking notes. Can we just talk about incongruously? Loyal stood in the midst of them with his axe propped against his shoulder. One big hand managed to hold an ink bottle and an open book pressed awkwardly against his chest, while the other scribbled as fast as he could dip a pen. Loyal!
He's trying to catch every word.
Taking notes. Yeah.
For his book.
Like, this is good stuff. I gotta get this. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love Michael Kramer's narration of that, like the indignity when he reads this passage. He's like, he's taking notes here. Like his voice almost cracks with indignity, and it's beautiful.
I love Honora's little, I let you think what you would, but I said I do not become advisors simply because someone tells them they are.
It's like, bitch, please.
Which, I mean, that one sentence reconstructs the entire conversation in my head.
I love it. It's all about that perception, though, right?
It is. It's all about not saying no.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say, doesn't seem like the kind of person who stills herself for Galad at the end of the series to me. I'm like, you seem smarter than this. You seem smarter. It's the last battle. You didn't have to do that to save him for Barrelane. You seem smarter. I don't know. Nora lets me down at the end.
I feel like she didn't think she would get stilled. Like, all the Aes Sedai were pushing themselves to the edge.
As far as she knows, she doesn't know about being healed from that. So for her to still herself to save Galad during the last battle, I'm just like...
Well, and we do have a theory that that's not healable. That being burnt out
it's not.
Isn't healable because it's
unacceptable. That is that makes it so much worse. How dare anyone burn themselves out unreparably for Galad.
Because we've seen, like, with Seattle Ann, as I like to call it.
Seattle Anon.
But do we know for a fact that she can't be healed? She might
I
be
think it's in the
healed.
companion, right?
I think it's actually in a book where someone
okay.
references the fact that she went to try and get healed, and they were told that it was like it wasn't the same, or either
Because
it may have been too
burned
long.
out instead of stilled
Right.
because she had been severed by channeling too much.
Yeah, it was organically frizzled instead of sliced or whatever.
Wow. So Honora actually
It's fully stilled.
lost the power to save Galad after he basically
That's my
died.
headcanon.
I always assume that she got into that situation and then, like, I don't assume that she realized she was going to get stilled, but then once you're that deep
Right.
into the flow, like, it's either die and, like, self-immolate or burn out, like, and she wrote it. That's how I headcanon it. That's just headcanon. That's not true canon. I agree with you on being disappointed.
No, that makes sense. I'm just like, I am not a fan of, like, relationships in Wheel of Time are not my favorite, and Galad and Barrelane are a particular thing for me. I'm just like, I do not need to read about these two beautiful people who were just so beautiful that they needed to be together.
But
and then for Honora to still herself for that, I was like annoyed.
But think of the comic potential when their child is Guidel Kane.
Yeah, I don't know if I need either of them in the story. I don't know if I need either of them.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, Honora had been going behind Barrelane's back and talking to Massima, and had actually betrayed...
Oh, that's Honora.
That's Honora. And so she had actually betrayed Barrelane and was attempting, and had a lot of guilt weighing her down. And so it's not necessarily dedication as it was guilt in causing the issues and betraying the person
Well,
she
this
thought.
makes me feel better. So Honora's just an idiot.
There is that, yes.
Honora's just stupid if she's hanging out with Massima.
Yes.
If she's that Aes Sedai, okay, so fine. Yeah, whatever. Go steal yourself, Honora, for Galad. Yeah. Who cares what you do? You're not paying attention to what's happening.
The whole every person who thinks they can put a leash on Massima, I would like to slap
Massima.
roundly around the face. Like, oh my god.
Anyone who wants to throw shit at Fael, I'm like, she killed Massima, and that's all I needed.
She runs a non-profit organization.
I needed it. Perrin wasn't gonna do it. She did it. Work, girl. Just work.
Yeah. She redeems a lot with that.
Like when she just takes him out, you're like, finally, someone stuck a knife in him.
How did it take this long? Like, she needed to be rescued from Malden, and it takes her, 48 hours to get rid of this rabid dog that's been biting at her husband's heels? Like...
It kind of reminds me of, like, of those jokes about, like, would someone just hand Harry Potter a Glock and, like, call it a day? You know, like, that's the thing. Would someone just please stab Massima in the face? And Fael's like, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Yeah, Fael's like, I need a bath, a sleep, and then I will deal with that. Fael's grand reveal that turns out to be not so grand.
Bolivar swore to obey you in all things and uphold your laws, but she has made plans to rid Cairhien of Aiel, to send them south and return all to as it was before you came. She also said that if you ever returned, you would not dare change anything she had done. The women she told these things, Marie was one of her attendants. Marie vanished soon after telling me. I have no proof, but I believe she is dead. I believe Bolivar, so it's nothing.
So thanks for nothing. It's just like, so you have no proof, and why were you here to do this? I don't know.
Idea. What if this is Fael's really rude awakening to the difference between what she read about in terms of spycraft and how spycraft actually works?
Okay.
And if we had her POV on the inside, behind her still face, she's going, holy fuck, this is not working out like I thought. And this is actually a really big, like, awakening for her, to her ineptitude, because she's in Cairhien. Cairhien is the game of houses, and the Borderlands are like, we don't have the game of houses, we have the Blight. And she's from the Borderlands, and she's just been a spoiled little child who didn't even pay attention to those lessons anyway. She's not fucking cut out for this. She's a little kid paddling around in the ocean.
And she's been practicing in the two rivers.
And she thinks she's hot shit for managing that. And so I think that maybe in this scene, she's half frozen by fear and half frozen by, like, her own incompetence and being, oh, I'm in deeper than, oh.
she has to learn from Barrelane. There has to be this sort of like not shaming, but like showing up for her to be like, oh, I need to get my shit together and get Chafail going.
Because she has Chafail, but she hasn't done more than like gather them in from making mischief at this point.
Right. Or that like at the beginning of, and I think that was like started when Rand left, right? And when Perrin left.
Yeah. Well, pretty much as soon as the women had strapped the swords on, she started to gather them in. But yeah, no, I've always wondered about this, and like this conversation with you two is making me just like have so much more appreciation for how much Fail puts a good face on what a learning curve she has to go through over the course of the books.
That makes sense. And I have to say, the last episode we did, when you said, I think it was last episode, that a big part of this moment is her establishing Chafail. I had forgotten that is I think that's really the only information she gives Rand that he doesn't know already, which is she was plotting to exile the Aiel. And so I forget about that connection with this moment. And hearing you talk about it now, I'm like, yeah, this actually is very important for Fail's character as far as establishing Chafail. I'm not saying there weren't other ways to do that and that I love this chapter, but after you said that last chapter, reading this chapter, I was like, I can see what Aradia is saying, that like this really helps establish how she is a speaker for the Aiel in this moment and starts to take that on herself.
Having Bane and Chiad by her side, I think, helps her see the Fail in ways that as people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I mean, if, like, obviously it's better if you can let people speak for themselves, but if you're trying to negotiate with people who don't see your allies, you know, like the fact that Fail appreciates the Aiel and appreciates the people who are cosplaying as Aiel, she's a really important nexus on making the Aiel able to interface with the Wetlanders at all, even with the Kyrianen, who, like, have most baggage on that front.
So can I ask a question? Because I mean, this is sort of basic, but I think it's something I didn't pick up on ever until talking to both of you. Is Fail the reason that those imitation Aiel go out of business? Is she when those that they become Chafail 100% and she's why that disappears? I don't think I ever picked up on that.
Yeah, all of her attendants, all of Chafail that goes with her and Perrin, those are all Kyrianen nobles that were the imitation.
Yeah,
Aiel.
I think that they were so in need that she gathers them all. I don't think there's a
and she gives them legitimacy by connecting them to the Dragon Reborn through Perrin.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense, especially in the context of rereading these chapters and being like, why are we spending all this time with Fail here? That makes a lot more sense. I think when I heard about the imitation Aiel, for lack of a better term that I just made up, I thought they were kind of worldwide. So I don't think I ever realized that it was a Kyrianen thing that Fail had localized control of. So I don't think I ever realized that was where the bulk of Chafail came from. Because when they say like they were all over the place, I thought they meant all over the place. But talking to you two about this now, I'm like, oh yeah, this chapter makes more sense. That Fail had to establish herself as like someone who was looking out for the Aiel. And then these people who needed a leader, she became that leader. That makes more sense now.
Nice.
I also love, by the way, the name Chafail. Fail is both sounds like fake Aiel, like put together. And
definitely never thought of that.
And the people of Fail. So
Falcon's Talons, I think, is specifically what. But yeah, that is incredible, and I love it so much. I never noticed that.
Oh my god, Fail, the fake
Yeah, the
Aiel.
fake
That's
Aiel.
what it actually means in the old tongue,
God.
and we're all just lying to
Oh
ourselves.
my
Yeah, that's
God.
great. I love that. The fake Aiel.
Yeah, and she gathers them up and gives them the leadership they need, so that way they stop pestering the real Aiel with their nonsense. Now they have a different identity that's not based on just cultural appropriation. And, you know, she takes them to Giladon.
Galahad Galad, now that I know both his names.
and takes them away from Kyrian.
Yeah,
so they're
because
in
it's a
Giladon.
very small population. It's just the young people of the Kyrian nobility. So it's like it can't be more than a few hundred people who might choose to join those societies. So she's really only probably dealing with several dozen, right? It's not that many.
It's like the group that shop at Hot Topic. It's really
I was trying to think of some sort of millennial reference for like one of the subclasses of millennials that I interacted with. And yeah, the Hot Topic kids, sure.
The Hot Topic goth kids. That's
I
basically
hear
like Jaffael gathered them all up and gave them spears and was like, hey, you guys want to be gothic? Let's go fight in a war.
Yeah,
Yes.
totally. I love it. I love it.
You want to rebel?
Especially because like I was one of the people who
Shot
wanted
topic.
to be a goth kid but was bad at it, and like I also admire the Jaffael kids, except that I don't. So like I have the same sort of mixed feelings, so this is a very appropriate analogy.
Yeah, it's like it is kind of a bad idea. Like there's no doubt about it. Like it's a phase, but like
You will get over it. It will date
will
you
get
very
over it,
strongly. That phase will have a very, very specific association in your childhood.
And that's sort of the imitation Aiel thing. I think then they grow up and become a group of
They have a different culture because of her
they have
leadership.
a different culture because of her leadership, and it becomes an adult culture.
Yes.
The Hot Topic folks grew up and became actual goths,
Right.
You know, or like
Or software
business people
designers.
or software designers, one or the other.
No, I think the
Or
evolution of
podcasters.
Shop Fael is probably like the thing that makes me like Fael the most up until the very end.
Mhm. I really admire her leadership with that group. It's very much like, I'm exactly 6 months older and wiser than you, so I can lead, and then it actually works.
No, I think the moment when they come back from Malden and she hosts their little funeral, like when she really when we see her lead Cha Fael, I think that's Fael at her best.
Shockingly, it has nothing to do with Perrin.
Right, imagine that.
That and I also, one of the things I kind of really love about Malden is when we're actually with Fael in Malden. I don't like Perrin when Fael's in Malden, but I love Fael when Fael's in Malden.
It gets a little repetitive, but yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, I
character
don't think so. I
development.
love those are some of my favorite chapters. Like I really love her relationship and building and the deal with the whole like negotiation with the Galena and the trap and getting out, and there is some weirdness with the brotherless, but like
I love the deal with Galena.
there's some real moral questions about how they deal with the brotherless that I cannot wait to dig into.
Yeah, I love the deal with Galena because it involves a channeler and a Black Aja, and that stuff's just like so fun. The stuff with what's his
Roland.
name that you think Roland.
Yeah.
That's not my favorite.
No.
I'm just at that point, I'm too close to the last battle to get into that shit. But I like the fork route and I like the rescue. I just think Malden feels like a delay for me when I get there. It's
Oh,
not
it
even
is.
that I don't like the subplot. I'm just like so anxious to get to the last battle that I'm like, all right.
Yeah, but I do love that it showcases the leadership that she's just starting to explore here. You know, she really like play acted at it in the Two Rivers. Here she's starting to play with, you know, live weapons, for lack of a better word. And then
Yeah.
Malden is really where she has to bring it all to bear. So this is a really important like middle phase in her development of leadership skills arc.
I agree with that. And I think there's some wonderful things that happen at Malden. I think Fael and Morgaze is an incredible moment. I think it's an incredible moment.
And
I love
Morgaze
that
plus
part.
Alejandra, like that interaction.
Yeah.
I love Morgaze and
Yeah.
Alejandra.
Oh, the outing herself. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fun.
when she's
Yeah.
like trying to tell Alejandra how to be a queen, and she's like, "You're a lady's maid. Stop telling me how to be a queen." And Morgaze is like, "You're the worst queen. You're the worst."
Girl.
She's like, actually, I am the penultimate queen. I am like the
Just the
I am
ultimate queen,
queen's
actually.
Yeah,
Not even
you're right.
penultimate,
Why
just-
did I say penultimate? Yeah,
ultimate.
just the ultimate. Like that. Like Morgaze is literally what everybody in the entire world thinks of when you say the queen. In the same way that right now we think of Elizabeth. You know, like
Yeah, either.
Yeah.
There's not like a worse person you could say that to.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Even though she's trying to be Magden, it's just like
It's
she's
like-
head dusking so hard, and it's fun. I enjoy their interactions because it shows you a lot about, again, how perception and that is more where power lies than like what's on paper, right? Like Morgaze
Yeah.
can't help but be more queenly than Alejandra, even when she's trying her damnedest to be Magden.
and yet she has none of the power because she's not any like.
But she gets
no
the
one pursues
respect,
her.
right? She's like she commands the room even when she's pouring tea, right? Like even when she's not commanding the room, if she wants to insert herself into a conversation, it will matter. She can't help it.
I love it's one of my favorite little scenes when she pours tea for Galad, and he's like, "Oh, when did she get so good at that?" It's like
Yeah, Elaine comments on it too. And it's
or is
like,
it Elaine? Elaine, yeah.
Like,
It was Elaine, not Galad. Yeah.
But like Morghese is over there, or Magdan at that point is over there being like, "This is by far and away the most powerful, useful position for who I am now, and I want to do this." And it's just like power is in your head too, right? Like you have to possess your role.
She doesn't half-ass even serving tea. Like, she does the best job that she can do at serving tea, and she's, like, better than anyone else has ever been at serving tea, and she will be the best there is, at serving tea.
Very
I do start to wonder about the details of that. I'm like, what's she doing so well that's so impressive? But I'm sure there's something.
I think it's just that it's her doing it. For people who knew her, it's just, like, that's so out of character, but it's exactly how a servant would do it.
No. It's like, if you were gone to a bar and, like, when someone makes a cocktail drink, like they can, and it's just,
yeah, I feel like
it's automatic. And then like if my mother tried to do that, it would be even though she's a great cook, it would be a shit show. She'd be like looking for things, she wouldn't know where anything is, like, and like just the difference between someone who's competent and someone who's like learning for the first time.
I totally hear that, but I have bartended, and I'm trying to think of a scenario where I pour tea in a way that's like impressive.
No, it's not impressive. It's just smooth.
I bartend and I'm like, I don't know how you do it in a way that's like, wow, you're really good at that. I don't know.
There's a lot of cultural norms with, it's not necessarily the pouring of the tea, but it's like, when do you pour the tea? How much tea do you pour? Who do you pour it
it's
for?
the culture. Yeah.
It's the culture that goes along with the tea pouring.
Also, if Camelin is medieval London, then tea culture. If we're going with Andor as mythical, then yeah, tea makes.
But I also love the image of Morghese like flipping teapots up in the air and kind of juggling them and spilling, like, oh, I'm going to spill the tea leaves out of what she's just juggling everything while she makes the tea like a bartender would.
Not Goslings?
Sure. No, she does it all. She does it all.
Oh, Super Skylick is saying we're just flat out wrong, that she's not good at pouring tea, but she gets better later after she's reinstated as Queen Mother.
Oh, yeah, no, she starts out terrible, but she goes through, like, this journey as she gets better at it. And then when she serves tea to her
royal children, it's
royal
Elaine,
children,
I think, but Galad's in the room also, so.
They're just like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah.
So, yeah, Super Skylick, exactly. She doesn't become a badass. She becomes acceptable. And that's what's remarkable, is that she was clumsy as hell. And then she gets good at it, and it's just like, that's so out of character for her to be good at doing tea.
I love that she was terrible at pouring tea.
Yeah, it's a very menial thing for someone who's the queen.
Well, I mean, you guys, there's a scene in Downton Abbey where it's like, I was like, I want to learn to cook. One of the girls is like, I want to learn to cook. And the people are like, can you boil water? She's like, of course I can boil water. And then she promptly like sprays water everywhere because she doesn't understand how the tap in the kitchen level works as opposed to like upstairs or whatever. It's just like, royals are bad at shit when you're mythologicalizing medieval through Victorian social norms. Rich people are bad at shit.
I mean, I don't think we have to, like, we can look at modern day politicians who don't shop for themselves and don't really, and who are millionaires, and some of their statements on,
those people definitely don't
what
exist.
can a banana cost? $10? Right? Like,
I refuse to believe these people exist. I choose to ignore it.
Rest in peace.
Oh, I know. Ugh. Anyway.
Treasure.
The Cat Lord of Chaos is also saying that it is impressive when someone can pour tea from a pot with a 6-foot drop.
Mm-hmm.
That there are tea arts. That is a thing.
I've seen people do the whole spinning and pouring.
Yeah. Turkish tea house tricks. Yes.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm. But that's like juggling your glasses as a bartender. It's not necessary.
Right.
I don't imagine the people in Wheel of Time doing that, but I wouldn't object if I saw it on the show.
Right. That'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe with the Cesara.
Yeah, people are like juggling teapots when they serve tea. I'm in.
Okay, so Dobrain is happy to be arresting Cole.
Huzzah.
He's into it.
Right.
As much as a coward is into anything.
Totally. Well, he's ready. He's a loyal Rand fan. He's ready to take power back for the Dragon Reborn. He's in. Well, and
he's probably had like a simmering rivalry with Colivert like since the dawn of their political careers.
Sure.
Right? Like that's.
Well, she did kill Marengel and Melon.
Right. She could have had Darlin killed if that was what she wanted, and he knows it, and so on and so forth. So he's very like, an opportunity to arrest her for high treason. I am so here for that.
Right. I next thing I have Honora stepping up with the evidence from the thief catchers from Barrel Lane. No, no idea who those guys are.
Doesn't it feel more important than what Fael says?
Oh, way more important.
The thief catchers we see later. The thief catchers go to Messima and die.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, we don't get their names here, but Berylane brought 2 thief catchers with her, and when Perrin goes to Messima, he brings her, and she brings her thief catchers, and they are ones who find evidence of Shan connections with Messima, and they go back to find more evidence, even though everyone says it's a bad idea because they've definitely been found out, and they're like, no, we're good, and then they don't come back.
We're good.
So that's what happens to these guys. It's so dumb. It's like, no, you stole a map. They absolutely know it was you. But that's how they die. But yeah, it's the same guys as is here.
And they get the evidence that we've talked about. She poisoned one guy. She had the other one.
Yeah.
Stabbed.
And she did that by coercing people. We have specific evidence of how she coerced them, and the specific trick is that it was Colliver herself who gave the orders. It wasn't through a proxy or a message or like that. It was a face-to-face interaction, and that's why it's high treason. Yeah, no, it's as good as documentation in an era where documentation is rare.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, like they're like, we need proof. No one has proofs. Then they just have Colliver out herself because he's a Taviran.
That is, eventually with the mounting thing, she does say, they promised you would never return, which is just...
Because they don't have proof, so that needed to happen.
Which, of course, is, I'm sure, a bad interpretation of what the Aes Sedai actually said.
Well, I'm sort of like, I feel like Fael and Honora both went undercover, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Honora kind of too, to betray Colliver. And then we come to this moment and neither of them has proof. And what has to happen is Colliver says what she did because Rand's in the room and he's a Taviran. And it's like, well, why did we need spies? Because one of them should give the proof, right? That's how I feel.
The men and women who are willing to testify that they killed the people and did so under coercion of Colliver is the proof.
Okay.
That is, she has the people who will testify that, yes, that woman over there told me to kill that man over there.
And I guess she's Aes Sedai, so she's obviously telling the truth, so it's like...
Yeah, so at that point,
fair.
The proof exists, and it's pretty much done, and Colliver, is like, oh, you got me. And
okay, so that kind of gets her to that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. At that point, the evidence is overwhelming. And she knows that she's caught.
But it's still a little bit of that Taviran tugging to be like,
sure.
Those words are in her mind, and it's way more than 1 in 1,000 times like that she would say that because it's just it's such a pregnant moment, right? So it pops out, and then it's sad. And then I noticed that I was wrong about something earlier, and there were people that were yelling at their podcast apps like a while ago because I was super duper wrong about something. So I'm gonna apologize to all those people right now.
I don't believe it.
No one.
Not for a second.
You can't be wrong.
No.
Rand changed the rules about how you get executed for murder. She is sentenced to hanging as a noble because he changed the death sentence for murder.
Because he was specifically trying to prevent her being hanged.
No, he wasn't. That was what we were saying before, was that...
It was, she demanded the headsman.
She demands the headsman because that was the old rule for what nobles would be killed with. And I said that he demoted her and then sentenced her to death or whatever. But no, she was going to get hung as a noble. But it used to be the headsman. That's why she demands the headsman, is because he had only just changed it. And so I apologize to everyone who had to yell at their phone or their podcast app when I got that wrong before.
But that's good. So she demands the headsman because the law was recently changed, and normally she would have to hang under the new law.
No, normally she would have been given the headsman. Yeah. So remember when Mangan got hung for murder? That was because Rand just randomly threw out a new version of capital punishment for some reason.
I see. Okay. So she's avoiding that by saying, I demand the headsman.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting then because when she does take control of her own agency and kills herself, it's by hanging. And it's like, it wasn't okay when Rand was doing it, but it's your death with dignity when you do it. That's an interesting line of reasoning because there's a lot of ways that nobles could kill themselves, right? We have Suroth talking about using a warm bath and slitting her wrists. Like, it's not like this is an unknown thing. but she chooses hanging for some reason. Like, is that some slap at Rand with her final act?
I think it's just the only accessible thing she had.
Doesn't have any weapon to cut herself with.
I'm guessing she was pretty much imprisoned. Like, she was in her quarters, but I'm guessing pretty much anything of any sharpness or anything was taken away from her.
And jumping out a window is, like, a lot.
Yeah, if you can even get out the windows of your castle. I mean, Kyrian, they've got those narrow windows.
Oh, yeah,
like
they do have really
square,
narrow windows, yeah.
They do have really narrow windows in Kyrian, so she might not
She
be...
couldn't
also,
fit.
then her mangled corpse would be out there for commoner to look at, which is not acceptable.
Yeah, no, that's
You want to die
good.
in private in your room.
Mm-mm.
She might have tried and just didn't fit through the window and was like, well, damn it. Got stuck and was like, ah!
She also got dressed up. She wanted to look good.
Right, yeah, and falling out a window is not a good look.
Yeah.
Splatter, not necessarily dignified.
I do love that Rand doesn't want to sentence her to death, right? Like, that's why he does all this. I don't know if we've gotten there yet, but sentencing her to the farm is about him not wanting to sentence her to death. And unknowingly, he sentences her to something that is worse than death in this world, that he's just not aware is worse than death. It's how I interpret it.
No, yeah.
Like, he
totally.
tries to be merciful, but he doesn't realize that she would rather be beheaded.
Well,
he's completely ignorant of that.
Well, he's forcing his morality on her. He's saying,
Yeah.
you will learn my puritanical, conservative, backcountry morality tale lesson. How dare you? And she takes what agency she has back.
That's interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
He's also saying, hey, I was a farmer who became a noble, and that made me a good person. To be a better person, if you were a noble who became a farmer, you could learn a few lessons. So there is that, yes, it's his morality, but it's also like, she is so disdainful of his way of life, she would rather kill herself than live the way Rand grew up.
That's a really good counter argument to what I'm saying.
All I'm doing is giving you my life. That was my life for everything, all of your citizens. You have to live the life of your citizens.
I never thought about that. I always thought about it as him just thinking about, like, what would be degrading.
No.
And I never thought about the fact that he comes from a farm. Of course, he would just be like, this is a casual life that you can go live and be a regular person.
It's a couchy house
and I am
arrest.
like being merciful, but at the same time, not realize that to a queen, that would be worse than death, not realizing why that would be worse than death.
Well, no, I think he does realize it. That's why I say he's forcing his morality on her, because I think he does realize, and he thinks that she's going to learn her lesson anyway. He doesn't think that she would be so bold as to take her own life instead. He thinks he can force her to learn this lesson.
I guess that's my point, is I don't think Rand ever fathoms that she'll kill herself over this.
Yeah, exactly. I think he thinks he's going to force this lesson down her throat, whether she wants it or not.
And I do think if she hadn't died, who knows, in a year or two, she might have found some happiness on the farm.
She probably would have. I think it's a terrible thing that she chooses to reject a peasant way of life and buy into her own shit. But I also think,
Look at Almathera.
Yeah. And I mean, she crowned herself. She believed in this. She bought into it wholesale, into the divine right of rulers. And I mean, like, I see Rand being like, I was forced to become a noble. How about you be forced to become a peasant? And he's trying to multitask. He literally means it when he says too much land has lain fallow for too long. I want to move people back there again to farm again. Right, totally.
He's 100% serious about that. There's a bunch of land between Kyrian and the Waste that is great land that is completely being abandoned since the Aiel War because people are afraid the Aiel are going to come pouring over the mountains again. Shocker. Which they did. But, like, he needs people out there farming because Kyrian is completely dependent on shipments of grain from Tyr, right? At this point? They're all coming up the river. And so he needs them to start feeding themselves again.
I think that's great. I really never thought about it in the sense of I'm sentencing you to my old life. I never thought about it that way. I always was like, he's just trying to fuck her over. And so I really like this because the truth is he is trying to be merciful.
Absolutely.
And I still think it's a really interesting plot dynamic that he unwittingly sentences her to something that in her mind is worse than death, which I think it is. I think she would rather have been beheaded.
Yeah.
But that goes to show so much about where Rand's at as a ruler right now. Like, he doesn't know. He has no idea what that means. He has no idea how shitty it is to be a farmer. In this world, he doesn't know. But I mean, like, I'm saying that half joking
because he does.
Yeah.
he doesn't know. And so that's, I guess at this point in the story, I start to think of him more as the Dragon Reborn, and I start to think of him more as a little bit iron-hearted and just making decisions based on being the dragon. And this, from what you're both describing, that makes sense, is really a decision based on him being Rand al'Thor. And so I was thinking about this as a Dragon Reborn statement, but the way you've turned me on this, I think he's being
Jordan is pulling the wool over your eyes again by having the character think and say one thing while doing something else entirely. He is absolutely, I am hard, I'm Quendiar, I have no emotions, and every decision he makes is entirely based around emotion.
You're right.
100%.
I was just thinking too about a few pages back, it talks about, I didn't change your laws, with the subtext being, I didn't change the laws that made it legal for my class to just randomly murder the lower classes, right? Like, those were law changes that Rand made. And there's a big deal about how, that changing that's a big deal, and she left it alone, even though it's a big deal. He literally consigned her to the class that for her whole life and her whole culture, she's been institutionalized to think of as, you can murder them free and clear. And he just took her from the protected class and put her into the unprotected class. And that is a fate worse than death, because you could be, assaulted to death in any number of ways and have no justice. And you probably consigned a lot of people to that when you had institutional power, because you're a cold-hearted bitch.
Super Skylake made a good point that a lot of farmers fight in the last battle, and it'd be fun to see her be a farmer, and then just a shot of her in the last battle holding a sharpened hoe, going at a Trolloc.
Oh my god!
instead of the suicide.
I'm voting headcanon. I want that.
Okay, yeah. Here's how you fix it. You think she's gonna hang herself. They save her. She goes out on a farm, goes to fight in the last battle, fighting Trollocs. Gets caught in one of those nooses that they get Matt in the first season.
The catch pole with the noose.
The catch pole.
Yes.
Totally. And that's how she
dies. And she's saving someone as she gets into that situation. So it's a perfectly legitimate end of the world. I love this so much.
These are fun things. I always fantasize about how Elida was used during the last battle. I don't know if you both do, but I fantasize about that. So the idea of other people who just ended up in the last battle against their will is really fun to think about. This is going to add new images to my storybook of that.
So much fanfic, epic alternate endings.
Sort of final battle flashes of these characters that maybe you haven't seen for a couple of seasons, and where they've ended
Leandrin?
up. Like Leandrin.
And it really brings around, no one is so lost that they can't be useful. Everyone can be a hero too. You could have, every single one of them as a Firefly, no matter how late they come to the fight.
There are a lot of people you could bring back in the last battle who we didn't see.
And we hate.
Who would be fun to see again.
And
who
we'd
we
love to
hate,
see them
who
die.
Would be fun to just... Yeah, or just be used in some way that one didn't expect, that they didn't expect. It would be entertaining.
So here
I felt that way about Alviar and planned to be, this big badass in the last battle, and then we watch her carried off by Ogier. So fun. So fun. I would love more of those moments of
Yeah.
Colavir's here and she's a queen. Nope, she's not. She just got stabbed and hung. Yeah.
Yeah, who needs extras when you have an entire cast of tertiary characters we want to see again?
People who've been cast out of the series already, yeah. 14 seasons of characters we haven't used. Yeah.
Oh my god, this is so true. I'm stealing that for the episode description. Thanks, TC.
At this point, there's really not a character in the show that we couldn't come up with a name for. That would be great if all the casting, all the extras had names. Every single one of them.
It's so easy.
They could do it.
The canon material's there.
Oh, do it.
And nerds are there
they would have
we
names
can crowdsource
left
that
over.
in 30 seconds. We will have crowdsourced the entire list. No big deal.
In fact, if they wanted to give us names, they could have a line of 3,000 Wheel of Time fans to audition for an extra role, but yeah.
I would play literally anybody.
Anybody.
Random extra number 7,000. I am so here for it.
When I was in college, I had a teacher, an acting teacher, who was a dead body in Titanic. And I honestly thought she was so cool. I was like, you were a dead body in Titanic? That's fucking rad. I just want your life And I still feel that way. Like, I'll be just like, severed arm number 7. I don't care.
Here. No, I actually got to be an extra in a film that got made at my high school one time.
Hey.
And it was like, they had to like put the little tape over all the logos on my backpack and stuff because something copyright. And it was just like a panning shot where like the actor's walking to school and like the car was driving like on the, far away to get this big long panning shot around the block. But they just had us do it like 3 times. Just like, everyone be walking towards the school. Okay, bye, pretend. That's all we needed. But it was like, I'm so special. I'm in a movie. No idea if it ever got finished or what its name was. Or like, zero concept. But I was in a movie. Technically.
Yes, extras, yes. Yes, work.
All I'm saying is I can hold my breath if you need me to be in a cook pot. Like, I can float up with just an, I can do a dead
I can
head.
see you doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Amazon, please.
Please let me be the floating head in the cook pot, please. That's all I want.
Bucket list item. Beach frolic food. That got dark.
So... Colivert faints because, God forbid, basically her whole life has been pulled out from under her, and I'm not that shocked someone would faint in that situation.
Yeah.
I have come close to keeling over when someone told me I was fired. It's amazing how quickly blood can drain from your head when you're told bad news like that.
Yeah, that stomach dropout, lighthead, it's a big build-up to have dropped out from you. Like, normally I criticize Robert Jordan for having people faint from emotion. Usually it's overdone, but this is not one of us. This one is justified.
Yeah, you were queen and now you're not. Bye.
And now you're nothing.
It's a very, very intense shift. And Queen of Kyrian is not exactly barmaid at somewhere, Like, this is a really big job. This is a very important nation. Lots of people gave a shit that you were,
Well, I love that before this happens, she demands the headsman's axe. And that doesn't make her faint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure.
He's like, oh, you're going to sentence me to death. This is how I would like to
Holding on to
die.
the scraps.
She doesn't faint then. Right, but then you take away her possessions and her belongings. And Rand doesn't, I don't think, realize what that means.
Her identity.
And then she faints.
Yeah.
I think it's her nobility. Not so much the land or the wealth. It's the fact that she's
it's
not...
her titles.
It's her
It's her status.
Identity. It's her entire sense of personhood, her family history, her relationships.
Her legacy.
Her legacy. Yeah, exactly. He takes that away and she's just a person. She can't deal with being that small.
That sucks.
And as a noble, Rand can't recognize why that's important.
Right, he has no idea.
He doesn't realize that matters so much to people who have lived with this all their lives.
Yeah, no, he's being forced into it and he hates it and he wants to retire already. Gulliver wants to be queen for life.
Yeah, he's not a fan. He's like, I don't know why you want this shit. I am done with it.
Yeah.
I would love nothing more than let you be the queen, but unfortunately, it's not gonna fly.
So Rand is basically like, she's alive, thank God, and Min is like, wants to say something, because, well, I ranted about that earlier. It's a betrayal of her visions. She's going to die by hanging no matter what you do, Rand, so shut the hell up.
But it hurts her to watch Rand process that, because it's not her first rodeo, but it's kind of his.
It is, a little bit, yeah. He's got to learn that lesson. And he goes immediately into sort of taking care of things, and then he realizes that he's in the middle of a bunch of nobles, and yells boo.
It's so funny. The way they all start to move and then they start to move faster and then it's just this feedback loop until there's a stampede of nobles in their heeled boots and their big skirts and their hair. Oh my God, it's so funny.
We're done here. We can go now. We can go, honey. We can go.
The clucking of chickens, follows them down the hallway.
I just imagine the small talk as they leave. Just,
You know what scene comes to mind? It's, The Fifth Element in the opera. When
everybody after the gunshot.
Yeah.
Wait,
yes.
Yeah. And all the people start running away, and absolutely.
Oh, and she's bleeding the blue blood. Oh my God.
Yes, absolutely.
The Fifth Element.
I love that movie so much.
A while.
Now, me and my husband watch that movie about once a year. It's I don't know why I don't have a tattoo for it yet. I don't know why I don't.
I haven't watched it in at least 5 years. I bet for its time it really holds up. I should go back. Yeah.
Not even for its time. It holds up today.
It's
I would
good.
if that came out today, I would go to theaters and watch that in a heartbeat.
Totally.
So good.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And the everything about that movie is perfection.
One match.
Aziz, light.
One match.
Big
I will
bada boom.
always remember that one
Yeah,
match.
yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I'll always remember the one match. That is like top 5 iconic moments in a movie ever for me. That match. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
no spoilers. I won't tell you what happens, but
Something
it's intense.
action movie with Bruce Willis. You can guess the ending.
And a match. Mm.
Bruce Willis.
I don't know love. Oh, it's so
I
good.
mean, and spoilers, I'm saying it. The ending is similar to Wheel of Time. The answer is love, right?
It's so true.
Wait, was that the answer in the real? I guess that was
She
kind
has to
of the
experience
answer.
She has to have veins of
I
gold.
mean, it's not true. Yeah, there's a big
No,
battle going on at the
that's
same time.
her
but-
experience. Was the answer for Rand actually love? Wasn't the real answer for Rand the true power? I think that was the answer for Rand.
It's
than
basically
love.
I think I'm thinking of Veins of Gold, where
I see.
We get to live again. We get to try again.
we get to live again. We get to try again, so we can do better. We get to love again.
The final element being love. I felt that in the sense of Rand seeing his visions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of thought there was going to be more to his relationships in the last battle. I did.
Yeah.
Do you like how I just come on your podcast and talk about horrible stuff about things, just throw shade at the Wheel of Time? And
Yeah,
it's
fun. Just be a downer and be like, what do you think about this horrible thing that I'm bringing up while you're just trying to talk about a chapter?
Yes, I mean it's the worst. It's the
Oh
absolute
yeah, no, we
worst.
hate it.
Please come back.
That's why we don't want you to come back next time or anything. Yeah.
I'm getting an email for this. We were just kidding. We didn't really want you to come back on Thursday.
Yeah. Seriously, I think John's gonna kill me one of these days. He's like, "Can you? The episodes just keep getting longer." I'm like,
my fault this time. My
Oh
fault
my
this
God.
time.
But I mean, like, John, you signed up for this, so we appreciate you, John.
John is working on something of his own, and I'm not going to say anything about it. But
We wish you luck.
We wish you luck, and I'm going to give you all the pushes in the world. Part of that is by announcing this, so that other people can bug you and be like, "So what are you working on, John?"
Dviande Sitovia again. Honestly, the Odges are very quiet, but like, we're tight. We do stuff. We have identity.
For sure.
The thing when we could always become more active if we really wanted. You should all join the Discord and become part of the Odges. Every accepted can join an Odja or two. Definitely not the Black Odja, which doesn't exist. Their cookies are all lies.
Doesn't exist.
All lies.
I won't hear about it. Yeah. I've joined the Discord and I've been having fun chiming in. I love the Discord.
Well, I think I'm going to read us out. This audience is at an end, Rand said. I will forget every face that departs now. Those at the front, the highest ranking, the most powerful, began their progress towards the doors without too much haste, avoiding the maidens and the Ashaman standing in the aisle, while the rest waited their turn. Every mind must have been turning over what Rand had said, though. What precisely did he mean by now? Purposeful strides quickened. Skirts were lifted. Hunters nearest the door began slipping out, first one at a time, then in a flood, and seeing them, lesser nobles among the Kyrian and Tyrants darted ahead of the higher. In moments it was a milling mass at the doors, men and women pushing and elbowing to get out. Not one looked back at the woman stretched out before the throne she had held so briefly.
It's so sad how quickly they're just like, yeah, we were in this for the shits and giggles. Bye.
Bye.
I mean, I get it. It's Rand and the Ashaman, but also, like, she really thought she had it made, and they don't hesitate.
She bet against the Dragon Reborn. Why would you do that?
That's pretty much what they're all thinking. It's like, that was a bad call.
Like, it's not. You were betting that he was going to be taken down. Like, that's a big bet.
But you're also betting on the White Tower.
Right. But I still think that's bold.
I mean,
you don't know the Dragon Reborn. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what he's capable of, and she put all her chips.
Speaking of Godzilla versus Kong,
Right?
have you like who do you put your money on? Right? You got Rand is Godzilla who can breathe lightning versus Kong, the protector of the people, the White Tower, who's been around forever. And like I kind of put my money on the lightning guy, but a lot of people are going.
Aaron says he almost respects her at the end, the way she stands up to Rand, but it's like she placed her bets, and it was not a good bet, but she thought this, she thought this was her chance to be queen, so she went for it. So yeah, it's not uninteresting. I would like to see other ways the story could take it, but it's not uninteresting that she comes in and sweeps up this throne.
Someone in chat earlier was wondering where she's at age-wise with respect to, and how much they are like age group contemporaries. I don't know that I know how old Colivere is. I mean, she could totally be in her 40s, which is how old Moraine is. Like, that, she totally could be. That makes perfect sense. Moraine's not like 200 or something.
Yeah, she's described as middle years in this chapter without gray in her hair, but whatever that means
definitely
in this
works
world.
with 40s.
Right. Like, that could be 30s, 40s, 50s. That could be anywhere in there in this world. Who knows?
But I think it's interesting to consider if they are of the same generation, like, what Moraine would say about this situation in particular, and if she like knows Colivere. So Moraine definitely saw Colivere at the beginning, like when she was sending all the young women, including Solanda, to Rand. Moraine was around for that, and then she gets off shortly after. But it's fun to think about if she knew Colivere in any way, shape, or form, or of her, because they were probably, royal cousins, so to speak.
So the three houses that fight for dominance in Cairhien are Damandred, Ryoten, and Saigon, which is why, and Moraine literally was about to be appointed on the throne by the White Tower during New Spring, right? So that's why she ran away. She didn't want that job. So there's no way that Colivere, at exactly the same age, at exactly the same time, wasn't also competing for the throne.
I hadn't thought about that.
Like, there has to be, there's definitely has to be knowledge of each other, whether or not, Moraine clearly tried to take herself out of the running by going to the White Tower and not being part of the politics.
Well, running away from the White Tower and looking for
Rand.
Rand.
Exactly, and then running away from that. But House Damandred, which was Moraine's house, was directly competing against House Saigon for the throne at that time.
So Colivere could have been vying for the throne that Moraine was running away from at literally the same time.
And it ended up in Ryoten hands, right?
Is Barthanes who's king when Rand shows up? Which house is he from?
No, Galdrian is.
Oh, right. Galdrian Ryoten. Yeah, Galdrian Ryoten. So yeah, Ryoten's in power when Rand shows up. So it was Damandred when he's born, and it shifts away from the Damandreds with events around
because of the
his
War.
birth.
Right.
Okay.
And then Ryoten's there when he shows up in Great Hunt, and now Saigon, because of the Civil War and everything, is having its turn now.
And Tom.
Tom, Civil War, same difference, right?
I don't know all those details, but I was just thinking, God, given that, she doesn't even ask how Moraine is doing when Rand walks in with all these people. She doesn't even seem to care. How dare she?
That's your cousin.
The nerve. The nerve. Your cousin has been through some shit. You don't even ask how she's doing. We don't care about you, Colivere. The least you could do is ask. Anyway.
I passed her just a moment ago, and she didn't even say hello.
She didn't even ask. Ugh, the nerve. Truly obsessed with herself, yeah.
Yeah, Cairhien sense of humor is the problem here.
So yeah, that's it for the chapter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brian, Recappa.
This was fun.
And
Thank
please
you.
come back in 2 days.
I hope I had some things to say about the actual chapter and didn't just totally detract you from what you were doing. Never mean to just come in and derail, but it's a habit.
No, and this is episode 350. I just wanted to say that this will be the 350th episode of Wheel of Time Spoilers, which is just I feel like I have to shout it out because it's a number. It's a round number, but wow.
Congratulations. I so admire how much content this podcast has put out, and I've really enjoyed it. So I think that's huge. Congrats.
Well, and we've made a real change recently that I think I've really enjoyed, which is bringing on people like yourself and really putting out the effort to have. It's made I think it's improved drastically the quality of the podcast, the number of voices that I've been able to have on the podcast and put out there, and the number of opinions, I think, and unique takes and stuff like that. So thank you so much for being part of that and contributing to that.
I'm honored to be on here for episode 350 and the two prior to this. And I love your podcast. I think you do a really good job just diving in detail, which is really fun to listen to. So I love what you do. I appreciate how many episodes there are because it gives me, I love that I can be like, all right, I need a podcast. Let's listen to another Watch Spoilers. thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor for me. I love this pod. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I love Recappa, by the way.
Stop it.
Like Recappa, just wonderful, fun to watch. Bringing the fun and the funny back to the community, and really, like, I don't know. I feel like the community was in a bit of a rut till Recappa came along and, like, stirred things up a little bit and, like, said, like, no, we don't all need to do analysis.
It doesn't, yeah.
Like, we can have fun with this, too.
It can be silly as fuck. And, like, so yesterday and today I binged Tarvalon After Dark while I was doing, like, my morning
fun.
kitchen routine and stuff. And, it's so fun to listen to this thing that's so fucking lighthearted. I mean, Recappa, the channel initially was that, but it's really fun to see that, like Seth said, it's growing now, right? Like,
that's so nice. Thank you both. That's so nice to hear.
Is a thing that we need, and it's good that someone's making it.
You're naturally fucking funny, so yeah, like
stop it.
So you just,
thank you. That's
laughing,
lovely to hear.
So it's been very fun to have you on the podcast, helping us be funny, because we have our moments, but they're few and far between. So thanks for making these ones more funny.
I love listening to your pod, and it's been fun to be on. I've been honored.
My sense of humor is punny, so that's.
I love a good pun. Okay, so you've listened to it, so I can't ask you puns of time questions, right? Wait, I've got one question. I don't know if you put this in your podcast. All right, the answer to this is a pun. I asked Colavir to hang out with us because she really wanted to blank. Wait, sorry, I said that wrong.
I was going to say, because you said
I said it wrong. Never mind. I gave it away. Never mind. Edit that out. Edit it out. That didn't happen. Ignore. I'm so embarrassed. Whatever. Yeah, cut that out. Definitely cut that out. Oh my god, I fucked that up.
Yes, you did.
I really did. I could have made that such a fun thing, but I fucked it up. It's almost better because it's me being really How terrible. Ugh, what a mess. What a mess.
So now you have to leave it because it's funnier that way.
Night Circus, yes. We were talking about the Night Circus.
Oh my god.
Oh.
And I brought that up because there was a complicated clock on, like, Elida's desk. Yeah, the Elida's complicated clock.
Yeah,
I was like, everyone, go read the Night Circus. And I got a DM from Brian being like, oh my god, amazing.
I emailed you. I felt embarrassed after because I was so excited when I listened. I was like emailing you while I was listening to your pod. And I think I was like, if you ever want to talk about this and geek out about this, we should talk. And it was before we had recorded our first episode doing this. And after I sent the email, I was like, that was maybe a little much. But I was so excited to hear someone raving about the Night Circus, because on my Patreon recently, I told because I do a weekly chapter reading. And recently I was like, we're just going to read the prologue and first chapter of the Night Circus because it's so good and I want people to read this book. It is phenomenal. It is, I break down sobbing at the end of that book. It is beautiful, and it's everything. It's a romance, it's a fantasy novel, it is a mystery, it's just got everything, and it's a fairy tale, just like it's a fairy tale for adults, and I can't recommend that book enough. But the clock.
Yeah, but I'm nodding to all of that. Like, I'm nodding to all
it's
that.
Just,
yeah.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
Aaron Morgenstern, it's gorgeous.
The language is beautiful. The
language,
one of
the
those,
structure.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it is a perfect little nugget of writing. Like, you don't find those often where you're like, you get done and it's like, that was tasty. Like, that was exactly what I wanted. It filled me up. It didn't overfill me. It didn't leave me wanting for more. I just got done with that book and I was like, wow, that was a book.
I think in fantasy, so often we're like, here's the first book of a series that you can read the first book and be happy. You know, there is more of the story, but you can read the first book and be happy. And if you're that kind of fantasy fan, as I am, because I like long stories, when I read a book and it's like, this is just one book and it's done, and it's actually a fully contained, beautiful fantasy story, I find that really refreshing and beautiful. And about the Night Circus, like, just, it's perfect. It's perfect. That is a perfect book. I have no complaints about it. Go read the Night Circus.
Go read the Night Circus. And I'm getting
It's so good.
third from Keith in chat. Like, it's,
And I'm not going to spoil anything, but Tsukiko is one of my favorite characters in fantasy.
Yeah.
Tsukiko is a phenomenal character. There are so many great characters.
I just remembered a couple of twists and went, oh, that's right. Like
Tsukiko.
Tsukiko.
Well,
my God, of course. Yeah.
Tsukiko is the contortionist in the circus, and she's my favorite. She is my favorite character. But it's a story about magic, and it's about how fun it is and cool it is and beautiful it is to celebrate magic. That's what the Night Circus is about.
There's a real joy to the book.
Yeah, because the two main characters are forced to do magic. They don't want to. But what unfolds is the beauty that they create and this world of like, oh my God, look what we can make. And everyone falls in love with what they make. And it's just a beautiful story about how we imagine magic. And it's just beautiful.
What I really loved about it is the story about fandoms.
Yes.
And how much the Night Circus captures the feeling of Jordan Con.
Yeah. The idea that this circus is defined by the people who attend it. These people who love magic so much and travel around the world with this magical circus because they love to experience it. It just, if you're a fantasy fan, it's hard not to relate to that. It's just a beautiful story about people who can do magic, who accidentally create something incredible and get a fandom behind them, and how they reconcile that. It's gorgeous.
And I think I discovered it right when the podcast was taking off as well, so there was sort of that parallel as well. So it was hard for me. It was an appropriate book for me at the time. It very much caught my imagination.
It's such
in a lot
a
of
good
different
book.
ways. Yeah. And it's one of those books
Such a good book.
It's one of those things where I imagine no matter what time in your life you read it, you're going to be like, oh, this is relevant to what's going on in my life right now.
100%. That's why I called it a fairy tale for adults, because I really feel like it engages that part of my psyche. No matter where I am in my life, there's just a whimsical nature to that book, but it also latches into something very real.
And I don't want to fool anybody into thinking it's not a very dark book at times.
Oh no, it's fun. It's fun.
But it's got some darkness to it, right? I mean, there's some scenes that...
I'm taking it Aradia hasn't read this from watching her face.
No,
Aradia, I'll make you a deal. Let's trade books. I'll read whatever you want. I will literally read whatever you want if you read The Night Circus.
Okay.
And it's not massive.
That's a big, I have Rage of Dragons over here ready to go. I've been dying to read it, but if you're like, I will read Night Circus, I'll read whatever you want.
Well, I guess I have to go read Night Circus then, because
you might have to.
Have you read Broken Earth?
Oh, I've read Broken Earth.
Yeah, that's
okay.
No, that's...
I actually just bought I've actually, to be fair, I've audiobooked The Broken Earth, and I just bought the paperback books because I am dying to read it on the page.
We have
because it's incredible. And I'm actually really looking forward to listening to Broken Earth spoilers as I revisit the series. But even the audiobooks have really stayed with me to the point that I think of it as one of my favorite series.
Yeah, so since I can't make you read that, I'll have to think about it. What I'm gonna
maybe we'll just talk about Broken Earth and I'll just geek out. I don't know if that's fair, but I honestly am very excited to reread Broken Earth and listen to your podcast, because it's an incredible series, and it's so well contained in 3 books. I'm so excited to revisit it.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get episodes for book 2 going. That's that video that Seth sent us. I'm trying to get my gears rolling for book 2 of the podcast. So
there needs to be a bigger fandom for the Broken Earth.
I'm trying. I've gotten at least a double handful of people to buy the books and fall in love with them my own self. So I'm doing my part.
That's another one that I would love to see a camera adaptation for. It might be hard because so much of it is in people's heads, but I would love to see a mini series of the Broken Earth. The obelisk. Is there a better book title than The Obelisk Gate? Is there a better title of a fantasy book than The Obelisk Gate? I don't think so.
I thought the 5th season was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a good name, but The Obelisk Gate, like if I'm at an airport and I'm just like, I want to grab a book, that title, I'm like, what the fuck is this? That's fucking great. It's so good.
Yeah. Well, should we get into this book?
Sorry, yeah. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
I'm
fine.
the worst.
But I'm just happily sitting here talking about books, being like, "Oh, right, there's this thing." So I mean, I don't know. This could just be a
I'll put it at
tangent.
the end,
It could
maybe.
be fine.
Right. Well, you know, we delved into the chapter overall in pretty good depth until right before we tangented.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?